The highway stretched empty before Marcus Dalton's F-150, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through snow-covered rangeland. 60 miles. At this speed, pushing 70 despite the ice patches, he'd be there in 50 minutes. If it was Ember. If Animal Control hadn't already taken them. If she was still alive. Marcus's hands gripped the steering wheel hard enough to hurt. His jaw ached from clenching. In the passenger seat, Evelyn sat quiet, watching the landscape blur past. She'd insisted on coming. "You might need help," she'd said, already grabbing a carrier and supplies. Marcus hadn't argued. The truth was, he didn't trust himself right now. His hands shook, his breathing came shallow and fast, and the edges of his vision flickered with something that might have been panic or hope, or both. "Tell me about Dubois," Marcus said, needing to focus on logistics, on mission parameters, on anything but the 50-50 chance this was all for nothing. Evelyn checked her phone. "Small town, maybe 600 people. Gateway to the Absaroka Range. There's a campground on the north edge, Whispering Pines. Mostly summer use, but they keep a few cabins open year-round for hunters and snowmobilers." Ranger Wade said, "Behind the cabins, so they're scavenging. Probably. Trash bins, leftovers. A nursing mother and 5 pups need a lot of calories." Marcus's chest tightened. 3 months. She'd kept them alive for 3 months in one of the harshest winters Wyoming had seen in a decade. Temperatures hitting -20, blizzards every week, predators. And she'd done it alone. Because of him. "Marcus," Evelyn's voice cut through his spiral. "Whatever happens, you did everything you could." "Did I? You searched for weeks. You left supplies. You gave her space when she needed it. What else could you have done? Not scared her in the first place?" Evelyn was quiet for a moment. "You had a PTSD episode. You didn't choose that. You're not responsible for your brain's trauma response." "She doesn't know that. All she knows is I became the thing she ran from before." "Then show her you're not. When we get there, if it's her, show her." Marcus didn't respond. The mile markers ticked past. 50 miles, 40, 30. At 20 miles out, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Marcus answered on speaker. "Mr. Dalton Clayton Wade, Wyoming Game and Fish. Ms. Kincaid called me earlier." "I'm 20 minutes out," Marcus said. "Are they still there?" "Far as I know. Haven't been by personally. Got the call from the campground manager this morning. Said there's a shepherd and pups getting into the trash scaring guests. Animal Control from Fremont County's supposed to pick them up at 0800 tomorrow." Marcus checked the dash clock, 16:47 hours. He had maybe 14 hours. "Can you delay them?" "I can try, but the manager's insistent. Says the dogs are aggressive." "They're not aggressive. They're scared." "I hear you. I'll do what I can, but you need to get there first." "I will. Thank you." Wade paused. "Ms. Kincaid says you're a vet. Marine?" "Yeah. Army myself. Gulf War. 91. Another pause. "Good luck, son. Bring him home safe." The line went dead. Marcus pressed harder on the accelerator. They reached Dubois at 17:30 hours, just as the sun touched the western peaks. The town was smaller than Pinedale, a single main street, a gas station, a bar with a neon Coors sign flickering in the window. Mountains rose on 3 sides, dark and massive against the dimming sky. Whispering Pines campground sat 2 miles north. The entrance was marked by a weathered wooden sign and a gravel road that wound through lodgepole pines. Marcus counted 12 cabins, most dark and shuttered for winter. 3 showed lights. Smoke rose from 2 chimneys. He parked near the manager's office, a small A-frame with a porch sagging under snow weight. Evelyn touched his arm. "Let me talk to them first. Sometimes people respond better to, 'I got it.'" Marcus climbed out before she could finish. The manager was a man in his 60s, flannel shirt, tucked into Wrangler's suspicious eyes under bushy eyebrows. His name tag read Ron. "Help you?" Ron asked, not looking up from a crossword puzzle. "I'm here about the dogs." Now Ron looked up. "Animal Control's coming tomorrow. You with them?" "No, I'm the owner." Ron's eyebrows climbed. "Owner, those dogs are strays. Been here 2 weeks tearing up trash, keeping folks awake with barking." "The mother's mine. Name's Ember. German Shepherd. She went missing 3 months ago from Wind River. 60 miles away. She was pregnant when she left. The pups are hers." Ron studied Marcus with the flat assessment of a man who'd dealt with bullshit his whole life. "You got proof. I've got pictures, and she'll recognize me." "Uh-huh." Ron set down his pen. "Look, buddy, I don't care who owns what. Those dogs are a problem. Guest in cabin 7 nearly got bit when he tried to shoo them off his porch." "Did she bite him?" Well, no, but she could have. She was protecting her pups. She's not aggressive. Tell that to my guests. I'm losing business. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He forced his voice level. I'll remove them tonight. You'll never see them again. Animal control's already scheduled. Cancel them. Can't. It's policy once a complaint's filed. Marcus took a breath. Counted to 5. In Afghanistan, he'd negotiated with tribal elders, warlords, insurgent intermediaries. This should be easy. It wasn't. Sir, Marcus said carefully, I served 12 years Marine Corps, 2 tours Afghanistan. That dog kept her pups alive through 3 months of winter because she's strong and smart and loyal. I owe her. I'm asking respectfully for a chance to bring her home. Ron stared at him for a long moment, then sighed. Cabin 12. Behind it. That's where they've been holing up. You got till 800 tomorrow. After that, it's out of my hands. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just get 'em gone. Cabin 12 sat at the far edge of the campground, backed against dense forest. No lights, no smoke, no vehicles. Empty for the season. Marcus and Evelyn approached on foot, moving slow. The sun had set, but twilight lingered that blue-grey hour when shapes blurred and shadows deepened. Their breath misted in the cold. Behind the cabin, near an overflowing dumpster, Marcus saw them. His heart seized. 6 shapes, 1 large, 5 smaller, huddled against the cabin's back wall where the wind couldn't reach them. Ember. She was thinner than Marcus remembered. Her coat, once thick and lustrous, hung dull and matted. Ribs showed under the fur. Her ears were ragged at the edges, frostbite maybe, or fights with coyotes. But she stood tall, head up, watching the tree line with those amber eyes that had haunted Marcus's dreams for 3 months. And the pup's god they'd grown. Ridge was nearly 40 pounds now, black coat, sleek stance, confident. Spark darted nervous glances between the forest and the dumpster. Cedar sat heavy and solid, a miniature version of what he'd become. Willow pressed close to Ember's side, small and delicate, and Ash was half the size of his siblings, but his eyes, sharp alert, constantly moving, tracked every sound, every movement. Marcus's throat closed. They'd survived. All of them. Stay here, he told Evelyn. Marcus, please, she's skittish. Too many people will spook her. Evelyn nodded, stepped back into the trees. Marcus moved forward, slow, hands visible, non-threatening. 20 feet away, Ember's head snapped toward him. Her body went rigid. Marcus stopped, crouched down, made himself small. Hey, girl, he said softly. It's me. Ember's ears pinned back. A low growl rumbled in her chest. The pups reacted instantly. Ridge moved in front, defensive. Spark backed toward the cabin wall. Cedar positioned himself between Ember and Marcus. Willow whimpered. Ash stayed frozen eyes locked on Marcus. I know, Marcus said, voice steady despite the ache in his chest. I know I scared you. That night I wasn't myself. I didn't mean it. Ember didn't move. The growl intensified. Marcus's hands trembled. He laced his fingers together, kept them visible. I've been looking for you. Every day. I left food, remember, at the clearing, at the ravine. I wanted to help, but you weren't ready. I get that. Nothing. Just that low, vibrating warning. Your pups are beautiful, Marcus continued. Ridge looks just like you. Strong, protective. And Spark, she's got your smarts, I can tell. Cedar's going to be a gentle giant. Willow's so careful, so aware. And Ash. His voice cracked. He paused, swallowed hard. Ash is the fighter. Just like his mum. Smallest, toughest, refuses to quit. Ridge shifted, glanced back at Ember as if asking permission. I'm not going to hurt you, Marcus said. Any of you. I swear on everything I am. Ember's growl faded, but she didn't relax. Marcus slowly, so slowly, reached into his jacket pocket. Ember tensed, hackles rising. Just food, Marcus said. He pulled out a Ziploc bag filled with jerky, the good kind from the butcher in Pinedale. He'd bought it yesterday on the slim hope he'd need it. He tossed a piece halfway between them. Ridge's nose twitched. His eyes tracked the jerky, but he didn't move. It's okay, Marcus murmured. You can have it. Ridge looked at Ember. She didn't react. After a long moment, Ridge crept forward, sniffed the jerky, ate it in one bite. His tail gave a tentative wag. Marcus tossed another piece. Ridge took it faster. Then Spark edged forward. Then Cedar. Then Willow. Ash stayed back, pressed against Ember's front leg. Marcus kept tossing, jerky, kept talking in that low, steady voice. I know you don't trust me. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But animal control's coming tomorrow. They'll separate you, put the pups in different homes. You'll never see them again. Ember's ears twitched forward. She was listening. I can't let that happen, Marcus said. So I'm asking, please, let me take you somewhere safe, warm, where there's food and water and no one will hurt you, where you can rest." He tossed the last piece of jerky. This time he tossed it right to his feet. Ridge hesitated, looked at Ember, looked at Marcus. Took 3 steps forward, 2 steps, 1. He was 3 feet away when he stopped, sniffed the air, sniffed Marcus's boots. Marcus didn't move, didn't breathe. Ridge ate the jerky. And then, slowly, uncertainly, he wagged his tail. "Good boy," Marcus whispered. "Good brave boy." Ridge's tail wagged harder. He took another step and pressed his nose against Marcus's knee. Recognition. Memory. Marcus's eyes burned. He lifted one hand slowly and touched Ridge's head. The pup leaned into it. "You remember me," Marcus said, voice breaking. "You remember." Spark approached next, then Cedar, then Willow, all of them sniffing, licking tails, wagging, pressing close. But Ember stayed frozen, and Ash stayed with her. Marcus looked up at Ember across the 10 feet that separated them. Her eyes met his, amber and ancient and full of something Marcus couldn't name. Fear, yes, but also exhaustion, and maybe a flicker of the trust she'd given him 3 months ago. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, "for everything. I can't change what happened, but I can promise it won't happen again. I'm getting help, therapy, medication, whatever it takes, because you deserved better. They deserved better." Ember's ears came forward, fully forward. "I'm asking you to trust me one more time," Marcus said. "Not for me, for them, for Ash. He's struggling, isn't he? I can see it. He needs warmth, medical care, a vet." At the sound of Ash's name, Ember looked down at the smallest pup. Ash gazed up at her, whimpering softly. And Ember took a step forward. Just one. But it was enough. Marcus didn't move, didn't push, just waited. Ember took another step. Another. She crossed the distance, slowly deliberate, every muscle coiled and ready to bolt. She stopped 3 feet away, stared at Marcus with those unblinking amber eyes. Marcus removed his wool cap, set it on the snow between them. An offering, a gesture of vulnerability. "I missed you," he whispered. "So damn much." Ember lowered her head, sniffed the cap, sniffed Marcus's extended hand. And then she licked his palm. Once. Soft. Tentative. Marcus's breath shuddered out. Tears spilled over hot against his cold cheeks. He didn't wipe them away. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you." Ember stepped closer, pressed her forehead against Marcus's chest. Her body trembled, exhaustion relief, maybe both. Marcus wrapped his arms around her carefully, gently, like she was made of glass. She was so thin. He could feel every vertebra in her spine. "I got you," he murmured into her fur. "I got you now." Behind Ember, Ash finally moved. The smallest pup limped forward, his right front paw dragging slightly, and pressed himself against Marcus's leg. Marcus looked down. Ash gazed up with those 2 bright eyes, tail wagging weakly. "Hey, Scout," Marcus said softly. "You been taking care of your mom?" Ash licked Marcus's wrist. Once. Twice. And just like that, Marcus Dalton, Marine veteran combat medic man who'd built walls high enough to keep out the entire world, broke. He sat in the snow surrounded by 6 dogs and wept. Loading 6 half-feral dogs into a pickup truck should have been impossible. It wasn't. Ember went first, jumping into the truck bed without hesitation once Marcus lowered the tailgate. Ridge and Spark followed immediately, trusting their mother's lead. Cedar needed a boost. Marcus lifted all 60 pounds of him with a grunt. Willow hesitated until Evelyn coaxed her with soft words and a treat. Ash was the problem. The smallest pup sat at the edge of the truck bed, staring at the 2-foot height like it was a canyon. His injured paw hovered, unwilling to bear weight. "Come on, buddy," Marcus said. "You can do it." Ash whimpered. Marcus crouched down. "I know it hurts, but we need to get you to a vet. Can you try?" Ash took a breath. Marcus could see his small ribcage expand and jumped. He made it halfway. His front paws caught the tailgate, but his injured paw slipped. He scrambled, yelping, falling. Marcus caught him, barely, one hand under Ash's chest, the other supporting his hindquarters. The pup's heart hammered against Marcus's palm, trip hammer fast. "I got you," Marcus said. "Always. I got you." He lifted Ash into the truck bed. Ember immediately pulled the pup close, licking his face, checking him over with anxious precision. Marcus secured a tarp over the bed to block wind-left gaps for air. Not perfect, but it'd keep them warm enough for the 60-mile drive. "Let's go," he told Evelyn. They were halfway to the truck cab when headlights swept across the campground. A white Ford F-250 light bar on the roof. Fremont County Animal Control, stenciled on the door. Marcus's stomach dropped. They're early. The truck parked 20 feet away. Two people climbed out, a woman in her 40s county uniform carrying a catch pole and a younger man with a carrier. The woman approached. You Marcus Dalton? Yeah. I'm Officer Sandra Briggs, Fremont County Animal Control. Got a call from Clayton Wade saying you'd be here. He asked us to give you till morning, but we had a cancellation, decided to swing by early. She glanced at the truck bed where 6 pairs of eyes gleamed in the darkness. Those the dogs? They're my dogs, Marcus said carefully. I'm taking them home. Uh-huh. You got proof of ownership, vaccination records, licenses? Marcus's jaw tightened. She went missing 3 months ago. I've been searching ever since. That's not proof. She recognizes me. She came willingly. I'm sure she did. But county code requires... Please. Marcus stepped forward, hands out placating. I know the law. I'll get everything filed. Vaccinations, licenses, microchips, whatever you need. Just let me take them tonight. Briggs frowned. The complaint filed says they're aggressive. Threatened a guest. They're not aggressive. They're protective. There's a difference. I still need to assess them. No, Marcus's voice hardened. You're not touching them. Excuse me. That mother dog kept 5 pups alive through 3 months of winter. She's exhausted, half-starved, and barely trusts me. You come at her with a catchpole, she'll fight. And I can't let that happen. Briggs's expression cooled. Sir, I understand you're emotionally invested, but I have a job too. I was a Marine, Marcus interrupted. Combat medic, 12 years, 2 tours Afghanistan. I know trauma, I know fear, and I know what happens when you push too hard too fast. This isn't a war zone. To her it is. Silence. The wind rattled through the pines. In the truck bed, Ember stood, hackles rising, sensing the tension. Evelyn stepped forward. Officer Briggs, I'm Evelyn Kincaid. I run Teton Valley Animal Haven in Sublette County. I can vouch for Mr. Dalton. He's been volunteering at my shelter for 2 months. I've seen him work with traumatized animals. He knows what he's doing. Briggs looked between them. You're willing to take responsibility? Yes. If these dogs bite someone, it's on you. They won't, Marcus said. I'll make sure of it. Briggs studied him for a long moment, then sighed. You've got 72 hours to get them to a vet, get them vaccinated and file ownership papers with Sublette County. After that, if I get another complaint, I'm impounding them. Clear? Crystal. Good. She turned to her partner. We're done here. They climbed back into their truck. The headlights swept away taillights, fading into the dark. Marcus exhaled. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath. That was close, Evelyn said. Too close. In the truck bed, Ember settled back down, pulling her pups close. Ash burrowed against her belly, shivering despite the tarp. We need to get him to a vet, Marcus said. Tonight. Closest emergency clinic is Riverton, 40 miles east. Marcus checked his watch, 1847 hours. They'd been here just over an hour. It felt like days. Let's move. They drove through the night. The highway was dark and empty snowbanks piled high on either side, reflective markers the only guide. Marcus kept his speed steady, fast enough to make time, slow enough not to jostle the dogs too much. In the truck bed, he could hear them shifting, whimpering softly. Every sound made his chest tighten. You think Ash is okay? He asked Evelyn. I don't know, but we'll find out soon. Riverton appeared like a constellation, scattered lights against the black plain. The emergency vet clinic sat on the south edge of town, a low brick building with a lit sign, Wind River Emergency Veterinary Hospital, 24 hours. Marcus parked under the awning, killed the engine. I'll get Ash. Can you check us in? On it. He lowered the tailgate. 6 pairs of eyes stared at him. Ember stood immediately defensive, but when Marcus reached for Ash, she didn't growl. Just the little guy, Marcus said softly. Just for a checkup. He lifted Ash carefully. The pup was lighter than he should be, maybe 12 pounds, when his siblings were pushing 20. His injured paw dangled and his breathing came fast and shallow. Inside the clinic smelled like antiseptic and fear. A receptionist, young tired, looked up from her computer. Evelyn Kincaid already checked you in. Dr. Patterson will see you shortly. Take a seat. Marcus sat in a plastic chair, Ash cradled against his chest. The pup's small body trembled. You're okay, Marcus murmured. You've been through worse. Remember first night you weren't even breathing, and you fought back. You're a fighter scout. Ash's eyes, too bright, too big, stared up at him. Mr. Dalton. A woman in scrubs appeared. 50s, greying hair, steady hands. I'm Dr. Patterson. Let's take a look at your boy. She led Marcus to an exam room, sterile, fluorescent-lit cold. Marcus set Ash on the metal table. The pup tried to stand, slipped, lay down. Dr. Patterson's examination was thorough and efficient. Temperature slightly low, heart rate elevated, breathing labored, weight severely underweight. Paw infected laceration, likely from a trap or barbed wire.
"How long has he been like this?" she asked. "I don't know. I just found him tonight. He's been in the wild for 3 months. Dr. Patterson's eyebrows rose. 3 months at his age. His mother kept him alive. Remarkable. She palpated Ash's abdomen gently. The pup whimpered. "I'm feeling some fluid build-up. Could be infection, could be something else. I'd like to run blood work x-rays." "Do it. Whatever he needs. It's going to be expensive." "I don't care. Fix him." Dr. Patterson nodded. "We'll take good care of him. It'll be about an hour. There's coffee in the waiting room." Marcus hesitated, hand on Ash's head. "Can I stay?" "We'll need space to work, but I promise we'll update you every step." Marcus forced himself to nod, to step back, to leave. In the waiting room, Evelyn sat with 2 styrofoam cups of coffee. She handed him one. "How is he?" "Sick, infected, underweight. They're running tests."
He's young, strong, he'll pull through. Marcus stared at the linoleum. What if he doesn't? Then you gave him the best chance you could. It won't be enough. Marcus! Evelyn's voice was firm. You can't control everything. You did your part. Now, let the professionals do theirs. I should have found them sooner. You found them. That's what matters. Marcus didn't respond. His coffee went cold in his hands. 50 minutes later, Dr. Patterson emerged. Marcus stood so fast he nearly knocked over his chair. Is he? He's stable, Dr. Patterson said. The infection's significant, but we've started antibiotics. His paw will need daily cleaning and bandaging for 2 weeks. The fluid in his abdomen is from parasites. We've dewormed him, but it'll take time to resolve. But he'll be okay. With proper care, yes. He's malnourished and exhausted, but he doesn't have any permanent damage. He's a tough little guy. Marcus felt his knees go weak. Can I see him? Of course. Ash lay on a heated blanket in a recovery kennel 4-line in his front leg bandage on his paw. His eyes were half-closed, groggy from sedation. But when Marcus knelt beside the kennel, Ash's tail thumped weakly. Hey, Scout, Marcus whispered. You did good. So good. He reached through the bars, stroked Ash's head. The pup leaned into the touch. Dr. Patterson stood behind him. He can go home tomorrow afternoon as long as there's no fever. I'll send antibiotics, pain meds, and instructions for wound care. He'll need to come back in a week for a recheck. I'll be here. And the other 5, what about them? They'll need exams too. Vaccinations, deworming, general health checks. I can schedule them for tomorrow if you'd like. Marcus nodded. Yeah, let's do it. Good. Dr. Patterson handed him a folder. Here's the estimate for tonight's treatment and tomorrow's appointments. You can pay at the desk. Marcus opened the folder. His eyes widened. $1,800. Emergency care isn't cheap, and with 6 dogs, I'll figure it out. He didn't know how. His savings were thin, disability checks only went so far, and he'd been living off-grid for years. But he'd figure it out. Sell something. Take a loan. Whatever it took. At the desk, he put it on his credit card and tried not to think about the balance. Outside, Evelyn was waiting by the truck. How is he? Stable. Coming home tomorrow. That's good news. Marcus leaned against the truck, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried him through the last 8 hours was gone, leaving only bone-deep fatigue. I need to get the others fed, he said. Find somewhere they can sleep tonight. My place, Evelyn said. I've got a heated barn with clean stalls, plenty of space. I can't ask. You're not asking. I'm offering. Marcus looked at her. Really looked. At the kindness in her eyes, the lack of judgment, the quiet strength. Why are you helping me? He asked. Because 4 years ago someone helped me when I needed it. And because those dogs deserve a chance. And because you do too. Marcus didn't know what to say to that. So he just nodded. Thank you. You're welcome. Now let's get them home. Evelyn's property sat 5 miles outside Pinedale, 20 acres of pasture and pine, a small house and a barn that had been converted into a shelter annex. Inside the barn was warm and clean with 6 stalls bedded in fresh straw. Marcus let Ember out first. She jumped down cautiously, sniffing the air, assessing threats. Finding none, she relaxed slightly. Ridge, spark, cedar and willow followed. Marcus led them to the largest stall, Evelyn had already filled bowls with kibble softened in warm water, and a bucket of fresh water sat in the corner. The dogs attacked the food like they hadn't eaten in weeks, which they probably hadn't. Not like this. Ember ate last, only after her pups had their fill. Then she drank deeply, sides heaving, and finally lay down. Ridge curled against her belly. Spark pressed close to her back. Cedar flopped beside them with a contented groan. Willow tucked herself under Ember's chin, and in the space where Ash should have been, Ember stared at the empty straw. Marcus knelt beside her. "He's okay, I promise. He's at the vet getting better. I'll bring him home tomorrow." Ember looked at him, searched his face. Then slowly she rested her head on Marcus's knee. Trust. Hard-won, fragile, precious. Marcus stayed there for a long time, one hand on Ember's head, watching her family sleep. Evelyn brought him a blanket and a thermos of coffee, then left him alone. At some point Marcus dozed off. He woke at 0600 hours to the sound of movement. Ember was on her feet, nudging her pups awake. Morning routine, time to move. But she stopped when she realized the stall door was closed. She looked at Marcus, not panicked, just waiting. Marcus stood joint stiff from sleeping on concrete. He opened the stall door. "You're not trapped. You can leave if you want. But there's food and warmth, and Ash will be here this afternoon." Ember stared at the open door, at the dark barn beyond, at the forest visible through the barn's entrance. Freedom, survival, the life she'd known for 3 months. Then she turned around, walked back to her pups, and lay down, choosing to stay. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been locked tight since the explosion that took Owen Merrick and Ben Garrett, since the moment he'd realized he was broken and would never be whole again. Hope, small, tentative, but real. "Thank you," he whispered to Ember. "Thank you for giving me another chance." Outside, dawn broke over the mountains, and for the first time in 11 years, Marcus Dalton watched the sunrise without wishing it hadn't come. The next afternoon, Marcus stood in the Wind River Emergency Veterinary Hospital waiting room, hands jammed in his jacket pockets watching the door to the back rooms. Evelyn sat nearby, flipping through a dog training magazine without really reading it. When Dr. Patterson emerged with Ash in her arms, Marcus's chest loosened for the first time in 24 hours. The pup looked better. Still small, still fragile, but his eyes were brighter. His tail wagged when he saw Marcus. "He's all yours," Dr. Patterson said, handing Ash over. "Fever broke this morning. He's eating well. Keep up the antibiotics twice daily, clean the paw bandage once a day, and bring him back in a week." Marcus cradled Ash against his chest. The pup nuzzled into his jacket, let out a soft whine. "Thank you," Marcus said, "for everything. He's a fighter. Takes after his mom, I'd say." "Yeah, he does." On the drive back to Evelyn's place, Ash slept in Marcus's lap, occasionally twitching in dreams. Marcus kept one hand on the pup's back, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing. "You ready for this?" Evelyn asked. "Ready for what?" "6 dogs. That's a lot of responsibility." "I know. Your cabin's pretty small and isolated. You'll need to make changes." Marcus looked down at Ash. "I'll figure it out." Evelyn smiled. "I know you will. But you don't have to do it alone. The Haven can help. Supplies, food, training, advice. Whatever you need." "Why?" "Because that's what we do. We help." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm not good at asking for help." "I noticed. But maybe it's time to learn." At the barn, Ember was waiting by the stall door when they arrived. The moment she saw Ash, her entire body tensed. She stood ears forward, tail rigid. Marcus opened the stall gate carefully. "He's okay, girl. Just needed some fixing up." He knelt down, set Ash gently on the straw. Ember surged forward, nose working overtime, checking Ash from head to tail. She sniffed the bandage on his paw, the IV bruise on his leg, the lingering antiseptic smell. Then she licked his face thoroughly, whimpering softly. Ash wiggled under the attention tail, going like a propeller. Ridge, Spark, Cedar, and Willow crowded around, sniffing their brother, nudging him with their noses. The family reunited. Marcus backed out of the stall, slowly giving them space. He latched the gate and stood watching through the bars. Ember settled down with all 5 pups arranged around her ridge at her back. Spark tucked under her chin. Cedar sprawled against her belly. Willow between her front paws, and Ash curled tight against her chest, where she could keep him closest. Safe. Whole. Home. Marcus turned to find Evelyn beside him. "You did it," she said quietly. "We did it. So what's next?" Marcus watched the 6 dogs settling in, watched Ember's eyes start to close, watched the pups drift into sleep with full bellies and warm bodies. "I need to make the cabin work," he said. "Bigger dog run, better insulation, maybe add a room. That'll take time. And money. I've got time, and I'll figure out the money. You could stay here for a while, till you get things set up. The barn's warm. Plenty of space." Marcus looked at her. "You sure?" "I wouldn't offer if I wasn't." He nodded slowly. "A few weeks, maybe. Just till I can—" "Marcus." Evelyn's voice was gentle but firm. "Take the time you need. There's no rush." For a man who'd spent 11 years rushing away from everything, the idea of not rushing felt foreign, uncomfortable, but also maybe like something he could learn to live with. "Okay," he said. "Thank you. You're welcome. Now come on. I've got stew on the stove and you look like you haven't eaten in 3 days." "I haven't," I figured. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus fell into a routine. Mornings he fed the dogs, cleaned the stall, exercised them in the pasture. Afternoons he worked on the cabin, drove out there with borrowed tools, insulated walls, built a proper dog run with chain link and shelter. Evenings he returned to Evelyn's, helped with the shelter. Animals ate dinner, slept in the barn's tack room on a cot Evelyn had set up. It was the most human contact he'd had in years, and it didn't kill him. The dogs healed. Ember gained weight, her coat regaining its luster. The pups grew like weeds, Ridge pushing 50 pounds, all muscle and confidence. Spark became the escape artist, constantly testing the stall latch. Cedar turned into exactly what Marcus predicted, a gentle giant who preferred napping to almost anything else. Willow stayed quiet but watchful, always aware of where everyone was. And Ash. Ash followed Marcus everywhere. When Marcus worked in the barn, Ash sat nearby. When Marcus ate, Ash lay at his feet. When Marcus slept, Ash curled up on the cot beside him, despite Ember's attempts to call him back to the stall. "He's bonded to you," Evelyn said one evening, watching Ash trail Marcus across the yard. "That's not going to change." "I know. You okay with that?" Marcus looked down at the small dog limping along at his heel bandage finally off, but gait still slightly uneven. Ash looked up, tail-wagging eyes full of uncomplicated trust. "Yeah," Marcus said. "I'm okay with that." 3 weeks after the reunion, Marcus brought the dogs home to the cabin. He'd done what he could, insulated the walls, installed a wood stove in the new addition, built a dog run with covered shelter and heated water bowls. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid, and it was theirs. Ember stepped into the cabin, cautiously remembering. Her ears went back when she saw the main room, the place where Marcus had lost control, where thunder had become explosions, where trust had shattered. "It's different now," Marcus said quietly. "I'm different now." And he was. He'd started therapy with a counsellor in Pinedale who specialised in veteran PTSD. Weekly sessions, learning grounding techniques, working through the guilt and shame and fear he'd carried for 11 years. He'd started medication, low dose, carefully monitored. Some days it helped, some days it didn't. But he was trying. Ember walked through the cabin slowly, sniffing corners, checking windows. The pups followed, less cautious, more curious. Ridge marked a corner. Spark investigated the wood stove. Cedar flopped down on the new rug Marcus had bought. Willow found a sunny spot by the window. Ash stayed pressed against Marcus's leg. After a full circuit, Ember returned to the main room, looked at Marcus, and lay down in front of the fire. Permission. Acceptance. Home. That first night, Marcus made dinner venison stew from a deer he'd harvested last fall, served over rice, and ate at the small table while 6 dogs arranged themselves around the room. He'd thought the cabin felt small with just him, but with 7 occupants it felt full, warm, alive. After dinner he sat on the floor near the fire, Ash in his lap, and called Evelyn. "How's it going?" she asked. "Good, everyone's settled in." "Any issues?" "Spark tried to eat my boot. Cedar knocked over the water bucket. Ridge keeps challenging me for alpha. You know, normal stuff." Evelyn laughed. "Welcome to dog ownership." "Yeah." Marcus stroked Ash's ears. "Listen, I wanted to ask you something." "Shoot." "You mentioned the Haven has a program, training service dogs for vets with PTSD. "We do. Why?" "I was thinking Ridge and Spark are smart, trainable. Maybe they could help somebody." "Maybe they could. You interested in helping train them?" Marcus hesitated. Getting more involved meant more people, more interaction, more vulnerability. But it also meant purpose, connection. a reason to keep moving forward. Yeah, he said. I think I am. Good. Come by Monday. We'll start working with them. After he hung up, Marcus sat quiet, listening to the sounds of the cabin. Wind against the logs, fire crackling, dogs breathing. It was the opposite of silence. It was presence company life continuing despite everything that had tried to stop it. Ember lifted her head from across the room, met Marcus's eyes. In the firelight, her amber gaze was calm, steady. Forgiveness, maybe, or at least moving forward together. Marcus nodded to her, a small gesture of acknowledgement, of gratitude. Then he closed his eyes and let himself rest, surrounded by warmth and breath, and the quiet certainty that tomorrow he'd wake up and do it all again. 6 months later, spring had fully claimed the Wind River Range. Snow melted into rushing creeks, wildflowers carpeted the meadows, and the air smelled like pine sap and possibility. Marcus stood on his cabin porch, coffee mug in hand, watching the morning unfold. The dog run he'd built now had a second edition. He'd needed more space as the pups grew into full-sized adults. Ridge, now 75 pounds of pure German Shepherd muscle, patrolled the perimeter like he owned it. Spark darted between trees, chasing squirrels she'd never catch. Cedar had claimed the sunniest corner of the run and was snoring loud enough to scare wildlife. Willow sat quietly near the water bowl, observing everything with her careful, gentle eyes. And Ember lay on the porch beside Marcus, greying muzzle resting on her paws, eyes half closed in contentment. She'd earned her rest. Her pups were grown healthy safe. Her job was done. Except for Ash. The smallest of the litter had grown, but not much. At 45 pounds, he was lean and wiry, where his siblings were broad and powerful. The limp from the trap injury had mostly healed, just a slight hitch in his gait when he was tired. But it didn't slow him down. Ash sat at Marcus's left side, pressed against his leg, alert and watchful. Always on duty. A truck rumbled up the drive, Evelyn's beat-up Silverado. She parked and climbed out, waving. "Morning," she called. "Coffee's on," Marcus said. She joined him on the porch, accepting the mug he'd poured for her. "Big day." "Yeah." "You nervous?" "A little." In an hour, they'd be driving to Cheyenne. Ridge and Spark had completed their service dog certification after 6 months of intensive training. Today, they'd be matched with their veterans Ridge, with a former Army Ranger dealing with severe PTSD. Spark, with a Marine who'd lost both legs to an IED. Marcus had worked with both dogs every day, teaching them to recognize the signs of panic attacks, to interrupt flashbacks, to provide pressure therapy during anxiety episodes. He'd poured everything he'd learned from his own therapy into their training. It had been hard watching them learn. Harder still knowing he'd be giving them away. But it was also the most meaningful work he'd done since leaving the Marines. "They're ready," Evelyn said, reading his thoughts. "You made sure of that." "I know. And you'll see them again. We do follow-up visits every month." "I know," Marcus repeated. He took a sip of coffee. "It's just, I got used to them being here." "That's called attachment. It's healthy." "Doesn't feel healthy." "It rarely does." Evelyn set her mug down, leaned against the porch railing. "You've come a long way, Marcus. 6 months ago you could barely look me in the eye. Now you're training service dogs and helping other veterans. That's huge." Marcus shrugged. "I had help. You had to be willing to accept it. That was the hard part." They stood quiet for a moment, watching the dogs play. Then Evelyn said, "I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "The Haven needs an outreach coordinator. Someone to work with veterans specifically, help match them with service dogs, do follow-up visits, that kind of thing." "You hiring?" "Depends. You looking for work?" Marcus glanced at her. "You offering me a job?" "Part-time, flexible hours. Enough to cover expenses and then some. You'd be perfect for it. You understand what these guys are going through better than anyone." Marcus looked out at the mountains, at the valley spreading below, at the life he'd built in this isolated place. For years, isolation had been safety, protection, a way to avoid being hurt again. But it had also been a prison. "Let me think about it," he said. "Take your time." But Marcus was already thinking about it. About the veteran who'd receive Ridge today, who'd learned to trust a dog the way Marcus had learned to trust Ember. About the Marine getting Spark, who'd find purpose in caring for something outside himself. About the possibility that his own pain could be turned into something useful. Something that helped instead of hurt. "Actually," Marcus said, "I don't need time. I'm in." Evelyn smiled. "Good. You start next week." They loaded Ridge and Spark into Evelyn's truck at 0900 hours. The two dogs jumped in eagerly, tails wagging, excited for the adventure. They didn't understand they weren't coming back. Marcus knelt down, gave each of them a final once-over. Ridge licked his face enthusiastically. Spark pressed her nose into his palm. "You take care of your people," Marcus told them quietly. "That's your job now. You help them the way your mum helped me." Ridge barked once as if agreeing. Marcus stood, stepped back. Ember watched from the porch, ears forward, but she didn't try to follow. She understood in whatever way dogs understand these things that her children were leaving to do important work. Cedar and Willow had already been placed, Cedar with a children's hospital in Casper, where his gentle nature made him perfect for comfort therapy. Willow with an elderly widow in Pinedale who needed companionship and purpose after losing her husband. That left Ash. Marcus looked down at the smallest pup who sat pressed against his leg, watching the truck with wary eyes. "You ready?" Evelyn asked from the driver's seat. "Yeah, let's go." The drive to Cheyenne took 3 hours. Marcus rode in back with Ridge and Spark, keeping them calm, running through their commands one last time. They performed perfectly. They'd been trained well. The matching ceremony took place at the WWII Veteran Service Center, a low building on the outskirts of Cheyenne. Inside, 2 men waited. First was David Torres, late 30s, former Army Ranger, 3 tours Iraq. He stood rigid by the window, hands clenched, jaw tight. The signs were obvious to Marcus: hypervigilance, muscle tension, probably hadn't slept well in months. Second was Jake Brennan, mid-20s, Marine Corps, Afghanistan, 2021. Wheelchair, both legs gone below the knee. He sat apart from Torres, staring at his phone, avoiding eye contact. Marcus recognized both of them. Saw himself in their isolation, their pain, their barely controlled fear. Evelyn handled the introductions, the paperwork, the logistics. Then it was time for the matching. "David," she said gently, "this is Ridge." Marcus brought Ridge forward. The big black shepherd sat calmly, eyes on Torres, waiting. Torres stared at the dog. "I don't need a babysitter." "He's not a babysitter," Marcus said quietly. "He's a partner. I work alone. So did I, for 11 years. Marcus held Torres's gaze. "It doesn't work." Torres's jaw worked. He looked away. "I don't want to hurt him." "You won't. He's trained to handle you at your worst. Trust me, I made sure of it." Slowly, Torres knelt down. Ridge stepped forward, pressed his head against Torres's chest. The man's hands came up automatically, settling on Ridge's fur. For a long moment they stayed like that. Then Torres's shoulders shook. Once. Twice. He was crying. Ridge didn't move, just leaned into the contact, solid and steady. "It's okay," Marcus said softly. "He's got you." With Brennan, the introduction was different. The young Marine looked at Spark with suspicion, arms crossed. "I don't do dogs," he said flatly. "That's fine," Evelyn said. "But maybe just meet her. 5 minutes. If you don't like her, no obligation." Brennan sighed. "Fine. 5 minutes." Marcus released Spark's lead. The dog trotted over to Brennan's wheelchair, sat directly in front of him, and placed one paw on his knee. Brennan blinked. "The hell?" Spark cocked her head tail, wagging slowly. "She wants to say hi," Marcus said. "I can see that. You gonna say hi back?" Brennan stared at Spark for a long moment. Then reluctantly he reached out and touched her head. Spark's tail wagged faster. "She's pushy," Brennan said. "She's persistent. There's a difference." "What's she do?" "Whatever you need. Picks things up you drop. Helps with balance during transfers. Alerts when your heart rate spikes. Interrupts nightmares. That last one actually worked. For me it did." Brennan looked at Marcus properly for the first time. Took in the weathered face, the grey in the beard, the old combat jacket with faded patches. "You got PTSD?" "Yeah." "How bad?" "Bad enough I hid in the woods for 11 years. But you're here now." "Because a stubborn dog wouldn't let me quit." Marcus nodded at Spark. "She's got the same gene." Brennan looked back at Spark. The dog was still waiting, paw on his knee, eyes bright and patient. 5 minutes is up," Brennan said. "Yeah. I'm gonna need more time. You know to decide." Marcus smiled. "Take all the time you need." By the end of the day, both matches were finalized. Torres and Ridge left together, the big shepherd walking calmly at the veteran's side. Brennan and Spark loaded into his adapted van, the dog already figuring out how to navigate the wheelchair lift. Marcus watched them go, feeling the weight of 6 months' work settling into satisfaction. These dogs, Ember's children, were going to save lives. He was sure of it. "You did good," Evelyn said beside him. "They did good. I just helped." "Take the compliment, Marcus." He huffed a laugh. "I'm working on it." On the drive home, Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Torres Ridge: "Just stopped my first panic attack. I don't know what you did, but thank you." Marcus showed Evelyn. "That's why we do this," she said softly. "Yeah." Back at the cabin that evening, Marcus sat on the porch steps with Ash curled against his side and Ember at his feet. The sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. 4 of Ember's 5 pups were gone now, placed with people who needed them, doing the work they'd been born for. But Ash remained. Marcus ran his hand down Ash's back, felt the slight ridge of scar tissue where the trap had bitten deep. The smallest, the weakest, the one who should have died that first night but refused. "You know you're stuck with me, right?" Marcus said quietly. Ash's tail thumped against the steps. "I mean it. I'm not training you for anybody else. You're mine. We clear." Ash looked up at him with those 2 bright eyes and licked his hand. "Yeah," Marcus said. "That's what I thought." Ember lifted her head, looked between Marcus and Ash, and settled back down with what Marcus could only interpret as approval. The 3 of them sat there as darkness fell, as stars appeared one by one, as the night creatures began their chorus. The Wind River Range spread vast and wild around them, but the cabin behind them glowed with warmth and light. Tomorrow Marcus would start his new job, would reach out to more veterans who needed help, would continue his own therapy, his own healing, his own slow crawl back toward wholeness. But tonight, he just sat with his dogs and watched the stars come out. And for the first time in 11 years, Marcus Dalton felt something he'd thought he'd lost forever in the desert heat of Afghanistan, in the explosion that took his brothers, in the long, cold years of isolation that followed. Peace. Not the absence of pain, not the erasure of trauma, but the quiet certainty that he was exactly where he needed to be, with exactly who he needed to be with, doing exactly what he needed to do. Ember had brought him that. This stubborn, fierce maternal dog who'd crawled to his cabin on the coldest night of winter and refused to let him stay broken. "Thank you, girl," Marcus whispered, hand settling on her greying head. "For everything." Ember's tail thumped twice against the wooden steps, and in that simple gesture, Marcus heard everything he needed to hear. "You're welcome. Now let's keep going." So he did. He'd thought he could control it by controlling everything else, by living alone, by avoiding triggers, by building walls so high nothing could get through. But Ember and her pups had gotten through, and now they were gone because of him. Marcus picked up the photo that had fallen from the shelf, his old Marine unit taken in Afghanistan 2012. He was there younger, harder, standing between Merrick and Garrett, all 3 of them grinning like they'd live forever. He set the photo back carefully, then shouldered his pack and headed into the forest. The first day, Marcus covered 8 miles. The tracks were clear at first, easy to follow through the fresh snow. Ember had moved fast, driven by panic and maternal instinct. The pups' prints showed where they'd stumbled, where Cedar's heavier weight had sunk deeper, where Spark had darted sideways chasing some instinct Marcus couldn't name. By midday, the sun broke through, turning the snow into a blinding sheet of white. Marcus pulled his wool cap lower, squinted against the glare. His breath clouded in the air, crystallizing on his beard. "Ember!" His voice carried through the silent forest, echoing off frozen trunks. "Ridge, Spark." Nothing. Only the distant crack of ice settling on branches. He found the first real sign at 1400 hours, a cluster of paw prints near a fallen log circled and churned. They'd stopped here. Rested, maybe. Marcus knelt, examined the snow. Small yellow stains. One of the pups had urinated, fresh enough that the snow around it hadn't completely refrozen. "You're close," he murmured. "I'm close." But the trail led uphill into denser timber. Marcus followed his legs, burning with the climb, his lungs aching in the thin mountain air. At 47, he wasn't the same Marine who'd humped a 100-pound ruck through Helmand Province. But muscle memory ran deep, and he pushed through the fatigue. The forest here was old-growth towering pines that blocked most of the sunlight, creating a twilight world of shadows and silence. Marcus moved through it carefully, reading the landscape the way he'd been trained to read hostile territory. Every broken branch, every disturbed patch of snow told a story. Ember was smart. She'd chosen a route that offered cover, that avoided open areas where predators could spot them easily. but she was also exhausted and burdened with 5 pups who couldn't keep pace with her survival instincts. At one point, Marcus found where they'd bedded down under a dense spruce, the branches hanging low enough to create a natural shelter. The snow beneath was compressed, still holding the faint warmth of bodies. He touched it with his bare hand. 2 hours old. Maybe 3. He was gaining on them. By 1700 hours, the light was failing. The temperature dropped fast 10 degrees in 20 minutes. Marcus's fingers ached even inside his gloves. He stopped at a creek bed, ice-sheathed and silent, and realized the tracks ended. Ember had walked them through the water. Smart, covering their trail. Marcus stood there, chest heaving, scanning both banks. Upstream or down north or south. No way to know. He made camp under a pine with low-hanging branches, clearing snow to bare ground, rationing his water. No fire. Too risky. He needed to move at first light, and smoke would only mark his position for... What? There was no enemy here. Only the cold. Only his failure. That night, lying in his sleeping bag with his pack as a pillow, Marcus stared at the patch of stars visible through the branches. His mind wouldn't stop replaying it. The thunder. The explosion of memory sang in 2013, the IED that took Merrick and Garrett in a spray of shrapnel and fire. The way his hands had moved on instinct, grabbing for a rifle that wasn't there anymore, shouting orders to men who'd been dead for 11 years. And Ember. The look in her amber eyes when she'd backed away from him, growling low. Not anger, fear. She'd trusted him. And he'd become the thing she'd run from before, loud, violent, unpredictable. The memory of that first night came back to him unbidden. 3 months ago, when the blizzard had raged and something had scratched at his door. He'd grabbed his rifle, heart pounding with old instincts, and opened the door to find her there. Ember. Starving, pregnant, bleeding from her paws where ice had cut them raw. She'd stood trembling on his porch, and when he'd raised the rifle, she hadn't run. She'd turned her body to shield her unborn pups from the barrel. That gesture had broken something open in Marcus. Some wall he'd built to keep the world out. He'd lowered the rifle, carried her inside, saved her life. And 2 days later, when labor started and Marcus had delivered 5 puppies with hands that shook with remembered trauma, he'd felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered to the darkness. "I'm so damn sorry." Sleep, when it came, was thin and restless. He woke every hour, checking his watch, listening to the forest sounds, waiting for dawn. Day 2. Marcus found fur. A tuft of reddish-brown caught on a thorn bush 40 yards upstream from where he'd lost the trail. Spark. The energetic one, always darting ahead, always curious. "There you are." Marcus breathed relief, flooding his chest. He tucked the fur carefully into his pocket. Evidence they'd been real, that he hadn't imagined the past 3 weeks. The tracks reappeared on the north bank. Ember had turned them toward higher ground away from the valley. Smart again. Predators, coyotes, maybe even a mountain lion would hunt the low ground. Marcus pushed harder. His legs burned, his lungs ached in the thin air, but he didn't slow. He couldn't. The terrain grew more difficult. Steep slopes covered in loose scree ravines, cutting through the landscape like scars, deadfall blocking easier paths. Marcus climbed over, crawled under, pushed through. His hands were raw inside his gloves, his knees protesting every step. At 11:30 hours, he found the den. A hollowed space beneath a rock outcropping, sheltered from wind and snow. The ground inside was disturbed, matted with fur and small depressions where bodies had curled together. Recent. Very recent. Marcus's pulse quickened. He swept the area, more tracks leading away northeast now. Fresher. Less than 6 hours old. But there was something else here. Something that made his chest tighten. Blood. Not much. Just a few spots on the snow near the den entrance. Dark red, almost brown. Fresh enough to still be slightly liquid in the center. Marcus examined it carefully. Too much for a minor scratch. Not enough for a serious wound. But it meant one of them was injured. His money was on Ash. The smallest, the weakest, the one who'd struggled from the start. "Hold on, little man," Marcus said aloud, needing to hear his own voice, needing to believe it. "I'm gaining on you. Just stay put, girl. Let me find you." But the trail led into a section of forest Marcus knew, dense, steep cut through with ravines. Hard terrain for a man. Impossible for pups barely a month old. By 1600 hours, Marcus hit the ravine, 15 feet deep, narrow, choked with deadfall and ice. The tracks went right to the edge and stopped. Ember had jumped down. The pups. Marcus's throat closed. He scrambled down the slope, boots sliding on loose scree, grabbing at roots and branches. At the bottom he found them. Not bodies. Prints. All 6 sets. They'd made it. Somehow Ember had gotten all 5 pups down safely. Marcus sagged against the ravine wall, eyes burning. "You're keeping them alive out here," he said, voice rough. "You magnificent stubborn girl." But as he examined the tracks more carefully, he noticed something that made his stomach clench. One set of prints, the smallest, was dragging more than before. Ash's right front paw wasn't bearing weight properly. The injury was getting worse. Marcus climbed back up, made camp at the rim. Tomorrow he'd cross the ravine, pick up the trail on the other side. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. Day 3 brought snow. Not the blizzard that had started this nightmare, but steady, relentless flakes that erased tracks within an hour. Marcus moved as fast as he dared, eyes straining to catch prints before they vanished under fresh powder. The wind picked up around noon, driving the snow sideways, stinging Marcus's face, even through his beard. Visibility dropped to 20 yards. The forest became a white void, trees appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Marcus kept moving, kept calling their names, kept hoping for a bark, a whimper, any sound that meant he was close. Nothing. He found Ash's trail at 1300 hours, the smallest prints definitely dragging now. The pup was struggling. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Hold on, little man. I'm coming." But the snow intensified. The wind howled through the pines, creating a wall of sound that drowned out everything else. Marcus couldn't see more than 10 feet in front of him. He pulled out his compass, took a bearing. The needle swung wildly in the storm. He tried again, shielding it with his body. Northeast. They were still moving northeast toward rougher country. By 1500 hours, he'd lost the trail completely. The world was white noise, snow above snow, below snow, filling his vision until he couldn't tell earth from sky. Marcus stopped, turned in a slow circle. Nothing looked familiar. And for the first time since leaving the cabin, genuine fear touched his spine. He pulled out his GPS unit. The screen showed his position 7 miles northeast of the cabin, deep in the backcountry. Battery at 40%. Signal weak but present. He could turn back now, make it to the cabin before dark, wait out the storm, try again tomorrow. But tomorrow the trail would be gone, and Ash, injured, struggling, might not survive another night in this cold. A sound, faint, almost lost in the whisper of falling snow. A bark. Marcus froze. Ember. Again. Louder. Northeast, maybe a quarter mile. Marcus didn't think. He ran. Branches whipped his face, snow soaked through his jeans, his pack slammed against his spine, but he ran. The barking grew closer, sharp, urgent, protective. He burst into a clearing and saw them. Ember stood 30 yards away, hackles raised, teeth bared. Not at Marcus. At the coyote. A big male, lean and scarred, circling slowly. Behind Ember, huddled against a fallen log, 5 small shapes pressed together. The pups. The coyote feinted left. Ember lunged, snapping. The coyote jumped back, testing her, looking for weakness. Marcus's hand went to his belt. No weapon. He'd left the rifle behind. "Hey!" he roared, voice like artillery fire in the quiet forest. "Hey!" He charged forward, arms wide, making himself big. The coyote's head swung toward him, yellow eyes calculating. For 3 heartbeats, nothing moved. Then the coyote turned and melted into the trees. Ember spun to face Marcus, still defensive, still between him and the pups. Her flanks heaved. Her coat was matted ribs visible beneath. She'd lost weight. A lot of it. Blood stained the snow near her front paw. Fresh blood. She'd been in fights before this one. Marcus stopped 10 feet away, dropped to one knee, hands open empty. "Ember," he said quietly. "It's okay. It's me. I'm not sick anymore. Not like that night." Ember's ears flicked. She recognized his voice, but her body stayed tense. Behind her, one of the pups whimpered. Ash. Marcus could hear it, the weak, thready sound of the runt struggling. Marcus could see him now, partially hidden behind Cedar's bulk. Ash lay on his side, panting, his small ribcage heaving with each breath. His right front paw was swollen, possibly infected. "Your boy needs help," Marcus said. "Let me help him, please." Ember didn't move. Marcus slowly, carefully set his pack down. Unzipped it. Pulled out the emergency blanket and a bottle of water. Placed them on the snow between them. "I brought supplies," he said. "Food, water, warmth. You don't have to trust me, but let me help them." For a long moment, Ember just stared. Then slowly her hackles lowered. Her stance softened. She turned her head, checked the pups turned back, and sat. Not relaxed, not trusting, but not attacking. It was enough. Marcus inched forward, eyes on Ember hands visible. She growled a warning, not a threat. Marcus stopped, waited, moved again when she didn't lunge. 5 feet away. 3 feet. He reached the pups. Ridge lifted his head-tail, thumping weakly. He was the healthiest of the 5, his black coat thick despite the ordeal. Marcus remembered naming him that first night, how the pup had emerged strong and vocal, already fighting. Spark tried to stand, but collapsed. Her reddish-brown fur was matted with burrs and ice. She'd always been the explorer, the one who wandered too far, got into trouble. Even now, exhausted, her eyes tracked Marcus with sharp intelligence. Cedar and Willow huddled together, shivering. Cedar, the gentle giant, even as a pup, had his bulk pressed protectively around tiny Willow. Both were underweight but seemed uninjured, and Ash lay on his side, barely breathing. Marcus's medic training kicked in. He checked Ash's gums, pale, pulse thready, body temperature cold to the touch. The right front paw was swollen to twice its normal size, hot to the touch despite the freezing air. Infection. Advanced. Hypothermia and infection. A deadly combination. "I need to warm him up," Marcus said to Ember, keeping his voice calm. "He won't make it if I don't." Ember watched motionless. Marcus unzipped his jacket, pulled Ash against his chest, tucked the pup inside against his body heat. Ash's small form was limp, barely responsive. The pup's breathing was shallow, irregular. Marcus could feel the fever radiating through Ash's small body, even as hypothermia pulled him down. The infection was fighting the cold, and Ash was losing both battles. "Come on, Scout," Marcus whispered, using the nickname he'd given Ash that first night. The night Ash had been born, not breathing the night Marcus had fought harder than he'd fought for anything in years to bring that tiny life back from the edge. "You fought this hard to live. Don't quit now." He grabbed the emergency blanket, wrapped it around himself and Ash. Opened the water bottle wet, his fingers touched them to Ash's muzzle. The pup's tongue moved slightly, licking. Good. Still had reflexes. Marcus pulled out the jerky from his pack, tore it into small pieces. He offered one to Ridge first, keeping his movements slow and predictable. The pup sniffed, then ate hungrily. Spark followed, nearly taking Marcus's fingers in her eagerness. Cedar and Willow took theirs more cautiously, but they ate. Ember didn't eat. She just watched Ash, her amber eyes fixed on the smallest of her children with an intensity that made Marcus's chest ache. "He's going to be okay," Marcus said softly, though he wasn't sure he believed it. "But we need to get him somewhere warm. All of you." He looked around the clearing. The storm was worsening, temperature dropping. Night would fall in less than 2 hours. "My cabin," Marcus started. Ember's ears flattened. "Right," Marcus said. "Not the cabin." He thought fast. There was an old hunting shelter about 3 miles southwest, built into the side of a hill. Stone walls, solid roof. It wouldn't be warm, but it would be shelter from the wind and snow. "There's a place," Marcus said. "Not my cabin. Different. Safer. Can you walk? Can they—" Ember stood slowly, testing her injured paw. She could walk, but it clearly hurt. "Okay," Marcus said. "We'll go slow." He gathered his gear, kept Ash tucked inside his jacket. The pup's breathing had stabilized slightly, warming against Marcus's chest, but the fever still burned. Marcus started walking, heading southwest. After a moment's hesitation, Ember followed, nudging her pups ahead of her. Ridge walked well despite his exhaustion. Spark limped but kept pace. Cedar and Willow stumbled along together, supporting each other. Every 100 yards, Marcus stopped, let them rest. He rationed out more jerky, more water, spoke in low, calm tones about nothing and everything. "I was a medic," he told them as they trudged through the snow. "In the Marines. 12 years. Did 2 tours in Afghanistan. Hot as hell out there, nothing like this. Sand instead of snow, but just as deadly if you didn't respect it." The pups listened ears forward, perhaps comforted by the steady sound of his voice. "I had brothers there. Owen Merrick and Ben Garrett. Good men. Better than me, honestly. They watched my back. I watched theirs. That's how it works in a unit. You take care of each other." He paused, swallowed hard. "Until you can't. Until an IED hits, and there's nothing but smoke and screaming, and you're trying to hold someone together who's already gone." Ember looked up at him, her amber eyes reflecting something Marcus couldn't quite name. "That's why I live alone," Marcus continued. "Why I went to the woods. Because I couldn't watch anyone else die. Couldn't fail anyone else." He adjusted Ash's position gently. "But you changed that. You and these little guys. You made me responsible again. Made me care again. And I failed you anyway." The shelter appeared through the snow at 1730 hours, a low stone structure built into a hillside barely visible under accumulated snow. Marcus cleared the entrance, pulled the old wooden door open. Inside was dark, cold, but dry. He got them all inside, then gathered what dry wood he could find from the shelter's ancient pile. Built a small fire in the stone pit, coaxing it to life with hands that shook from cold and exhaustion. When the flames caught casting orange light across the shelter's interior, Marcus finally let himself collapse. Ember settled her pups around the fire. Ridge and Cedar immediately flopped down, exhausted. Spark circled 3 times before curling into a tight ball. Willow pressed against Ember's side. Marcus kept Ash against his chest by the fire's warmth. The pup's breathing was easier now, but the fever still raged. The infected paw needed treatment, antibiotics, cleaning, possibly surgery if the infection had spread to the bone. "Tomorrow," Marcus told Ash quietly. "Tomorrow I'll get you real help. Just hold on till tomorrow." Ash's tail twitched once weakly. That night, Marcus stayed awake, keeping the fire fed, monitoring Ash's condition. Ember didn't sleep either. She lay with her pups, but her eyes stayed open, watching Marcus, watching the door, watching for threats. Around midnight, a sound outside made her stand. A low growl rumbled in her chest. Marcus tensed, listened. Footsteps in the snow, multiple sets. Heavy, too heavy for deer or elk. Wolves. Marcus added wood to the fire, making it brighter. Wolves avoided fire usually. The footsteps circled the shelter. Marcus counted at least 3 distinct patterns. A small pack. Ember's growl intensified. The pups woke, pressing against their mother. "Easy," Marcus said softly. "Fire's bright. They won't come close." But one wolf appeared in the doorway, a big grey male eyes reflecting the firelight. It looked at Ember, at the pups, assessing. Marcus stood slowly, positioning himself between the wolf and the dogs. He grabbed a burning branch from the fire, held it out like a weapon. "Get out," he said, voice low and commanding. "Not today. Not them." The wolf stared at him for a long moment. Then, with what Marcus could only interpret as disdain, it turned and walked away. The footsteps faded into the night. Marcus waited another hour before sitting back down. His hands were shaking, adrenaline and exhaustion, and the weight of what he'd just prevented. Ember was watching him. Really watching him now, not with fear or wariness, but with something else. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. He'd protected her family. Again. Marcus fed the fire, checked Ash's breathing, closed his eyes for just a moment. When he woke, pale dawn light was filtering through the shelter's entrance. The fire had burned down to coals, and Ember had moved. She lay next to Marcus now, her body between him and the door, protecting him just as he'd protected her. Her pups were arranged around them both, creating a circle of warmth. Ridge at Marcus's feet, Spark against his left side, Cedar sprawled across his legs, Willow tucked under his arm, and Ash still against his chest, still breathing, still fighting. Marcus looked down at Ember. Her amber eyes met his, and for the first time in 3 days, Marcus smiled. "Thank you," he whispered. Ember's tail thumped once against the stone floor. They'd survived the night, together. The walk back to civilization took 2 days. Marcus couldn't take them to his cabin. Ember's fear was still too fresh. But there was a town, Pinedale, about 15 miles southwest. They could make it if they moved slow, took breaks, rationed the remaining food. Ash couldn't walk, so Marcus carried him the whole way, tucked inside his jacket. The pup's fever had broken during the night, but the infection in his paw was worse. The swelling had spread halfway up his leg. Without treatment soon they'd lose the leg. Or worse. The other pups struggled but kept moving. Ridge led the way most of the time, following Marcus's footsteps through the snow. Spark ranged ahead occasionally before Ember's sharp bark called her back. Cedar and Willow walked side by side, supporting each other when one stumbled. Ember limped on her injured paw, but she never stopped, never gave up. Her maternal drive overrode exhaustion, pain, fear. Marcus rationed his water carefully, making sure the pups drank first. His own lips cracked from dehydration, his throat raw, but he could handle it. They couldn't. On the afternoon of the first day, they encountered a frozen stream. Marcus broke through the ice with a rock, let everyone drink their fill. The water was so cold it hurt going down, but it was clean, and they needed it desperately. That night they sheltered under a dense spruce, the branches heavy with snow, creating a natural tent. Marcus built another small fire, fed the pups the last of his jerky. "Tomorrow," he told them, "we hit the highway. Maybe we can flag down a truck, get a ride into town. But he doubted anyone would stop for a bearded, wild-eyed man carrying 6 dogs. Still, he had to try. Day 5 of the search day, 2 of the journey back, they reached the highway at mid-morning. Highway 191, the main route through Sublette County. Marcus stood at the edge of the asphalt, swaying with exhaustion, Ash limp in his arms, 5 bedraggled pups, and 1 exhausted mother dog at his feet. The first 3 vehicles passed without slowing. The fourth, a beat-up Silverado brake lights flashed, backed up. A woman leaned out the window, auburn hair, kind eyes, mid-30s. "You need help?" Marcus almost laughed, almost cried. Yeah, we do. Get in. I'll take you wherever you need to go." Her name was Evelyn Kincaid. She ran an animal shelter in Pinedale, and she didn't ask questions as Marcus loaded 6 dogs into her truck bed, climbed into the passenger seat with Ash still tucked against his chest. "Vet clinic?" she asked, pulling back onto the highway. "Please." "You've been in the woods for a while." 5 days. "Looking for them?" Marcus nodded. Evelyn glanced in the rearview mirror at the dogs huddled in the truck bed. "Must be some dogs." "They are." 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a small veterinary clinic on the edge of Pinedale. Dr. Sarah Chen came out when Evelyn called, took one look at Ash and ushered them inside immediately. The exam was quick and thorough. Ash had a severe infection from what looked like a puncture wound, possibly from a stick, possibly from stepping wrong on frozen ground. The fever had broken, but the infection was deep. "He needs surgery," Dr. Chen said. "I can do it today, but it'll be expensive." "How much? $1,200. Maybe more if there's bone involvement." Marcus's savings account had maybe $400. His disability check wouldn't come for another 2 weeks. "I'll figure it out," he said. Evelyn touched his arm. "I can help." "I can't ask." "You're not asking. I'm offering. The shelter has an emergency fund for situations like this." Marcus looked at her, this stranger who'd stopped for a desperate man on a highway who was now offering to pay for surgery for a dog that wasn't hers. "Why?" Evelyn smiled sadly. "Because 4 years ago I lost my husband, and I spent 6 months not caring if I lived or died. Then someone brought me a dog who needed help, and helping that dog helped me. So now I help others. Pay it forward." Marcus felt his eyes burn. "Thank you. Save it for when he's healthy." While Dr. Chen prepped Ash for surgery, Evelyn helped Marcus get the other dogs examined. All 5 were malnourished, dehydrated, covered in minor cuts and scrapes. But they'd survive. Ember was the surprise. Under all the matted fur and dirt, under the weight loss and exhaustion, she was a beautiful dog. Probably 3 or 4 years old, purebred German shepherd with intelligent eyes and a noble bearing. "Someone trained her," Dr. Chen said, running her hands over Ember's body, checking for injuries. "She knows basic commands. Sit, stay, heel. Someone invested time in her." "Then why was she out there alone?" Marcus asked. "Could be a lot of reasons. Owner died. Owner abandoned her. She got lost. With pregnant dogs, sometimes people dump them rather than deal with a litter." The thought made Marcus's jaw clench. Someone had thrown away this magnificent animal because she was inconvenient. "She's mine now," he said firmly. Dr. Chen smiled. "I think she already decided that." Ash's surgery took 3 hours. Marcus paced the waiting room the entire time, unable to sit, unable to focus on the magazines Evelyn kept offering. When Dr. Chen finally emerged, Marcus nearly knocked over a chair standing up. "He's fine," she said quickly. "Surgery went well. I removed a lot of infected tissue, flushed the wound, inserted a drain. He'll need antibiotics for 2 weeks and restricted activity, but he should make a full recovery." Marcus's knees went weak. "Can I see him?" "He's still sedated, but yes." Ash looked small on the recovery table, one front leg wrapped in bandages, an IV line in his other leg. But his breathing was steady, and his color was better. Marcus touched the pup's head gently. "You did it, Scout. You fought hard enough." Over the next week, Marcus stayed in Pinedale. Evelyn offered him a room above the shelter, small basic but warm and dry. The dogs stayed in a large kennel she'd cleared out Ember with her pups, all of them together. Marcus helped around the shelter to earn his keep. Fixed a broken fence, cleaned kennels, walked dogs. Simple work, physical work, the kind that didn't require him to think too much. But every evening he sat with Ember and her pups, watching them heal. Ridge grew stronger each day, his confidence returning. Spark explored every corner of the kennel, her curiosity undiminished. Cedar found the sunniest spot and claimed it as his own. Willow stayed close to Ember, content to watch rather than explore. And Ash recovered slowly but steadily. The infection cleared. The swelling went down. By the end of the week he was putting weight on the injured paw. Marcus changed the bandages daily, administering the antibiotics with practiced hands. Medic skills never really left you. On the 8th day, Evelyn found Marcus in the kennel sitting cross-legged on the floor, while 6 dogs climbed over him. "You're good with them," she said. "I was a medic. It's not that different."
"It's more than that. You care." Marcus didn't respond. "I have a proposition," Evelyn continued. "The shelter needs volunteers. People who know dogs, who understand trauma, who can help rehabilitate animals that have been through hell. You interested?" Marcus looked up at her. "I don't know how long I'm staying. So stay as long as you want. Work as much or as little as you want. No pressure." "Why me?" "Because you spent 5 days in a blizzard looking for a dog who ran from you. Because you carried a sick puppy 15 miles through the woods. Because I see the way you are with them, patient, gentle, committed. That's exactly what we need here." Marcus looked down at Ash, who was gnawing on his bootlace. "I'll think about it. Take your time." But Marcus was already thinking about it. About having purpose. About helping others the way he was helping these 6. About maybe possibly finding a way forward that wasn't just survival. 2 weeks after the reunion, Marcus made a decision. He couldn't take the dogs back to his cabin. The place held too many bad memories for Ember, and honestly for him too. He needed a fresh start. Evelyn helped him find a small rental house on the outskirts of Pinedale. 2 bedrooms, fenced yard, month-to-month lease. It was more human contact than Marcus had dealt with in years. Landlord, neighbours, people on the street who said hello, but he handled it. Barely. The dogs made it easier. Walking 6 German shepherds drew attention, yes, but it also gave Marcus something to focus on besides his own discomfort. People smiled at the dogs, asked their names, told stories about their own pets. Marcus kept his answers short, but he answered. Small talk, normal interaction. Things he'd avoided for 11 years. It felt like learning to walk again. He started therapy too. Evelyn had connected him with Dr. James Morrison, a psychologist in Pinedale who specialized in veteran PTSD. Marcus resisted at first, talking about feelings about trauma, about the things he'd spent over a decade trying to forget. But Dr. Morrison was a Vietnam vet himself. He understood in a way civilian therapists couldn't. And slowly, painfully, Marcus began to unpack the weight he'd been carrying since Sangin. The guilt of surviving when Merrick and Garrett didn't. The shame of his PTSD, of being weak, as he saw it. The fear that he'd hurt someone during an episode, that he'd become dangerous. "You're not dangerous," Dr. Morrison said during one session. "You're traumatized. There's a difference. I scared Ember. I could have hurt the pups. But you didn't. You scared them, yes. But the moment you came out of the flashback, what did you do?" Marcus thought back. I tried to stop them from leaving, and when you couldn't, I went after them. I searched for 5 days. Exactly, because that's who you are. Not the flashback, not the PTSD. You, the man who carries injured puppies through blizzards, that's your truth. The words settled into Marcus's chest, heavy and strange. He wasn't sure he believed them yet, but he wanted to. At the shelter, Marcus discovered he had a gift for working with traumatized animals. There was a pit bull named Duke who'd been used in fighting rings. Aggressive, scared, unwilling to trust. Marcus sat with him for hours, not forcing contact, just being present. After 2 weeks, Duke ate from Marcus's hand. After a month, Duke let Marcus touch him. There was a border collie mix named Rosie who'd been hit by a car and surrendered by her owner. She'd given up, stopped eating, stopped caring. Marcus worked with her everyday physical therapy for her injured leg, hand-feeding, gentle encouragement. Rosie recovered. She was adopted by a rancher who needed a herding dog. There were dozens of others, each one broken in some way. Each one needing patience and time, and someone who understood that healing wasn't linear. Marcus understood that better than most. And through it all, Ember and her pups were there. They came to the shelter with Marcus every day. Ridge appointed himself Marcus's shadow, following him from kennel to kennel. Spark charmed every visitor who came through. Cedar became the unofficial therapy dog content to let scared animals lean against his bulk. Willow stayed quiet and watchful, and Ash never left Marcus's side. The smallest pup, now growing into a lean, intelligent adult, had claimed Marcus as his human completely. Where Marcus went, Ash followed. "He's bonded to you," Evelyn said one afternoon, watching Ash settle at Marcus's feet during a break. "That's not going to change." "I know. You okay with that?" Marcus looked down at Ash, who looked back with complete trust and devotion. "Yeah, I'm okay with that."
3 months after the reunion, Evelyn came to Marcus with a proposal. "We're starting a new program," she said. "Training service dogs for veterans with PTSD. I'd like your help." Marcus set down the fence post he'd been installing. "I'm not a dog trainer." "No, but you understand PTSD from both sides, as someone who has it, and as someone who works with traumatized animals. That's exactly what we need." "I don't know." Ridge and Spark are perfect candidates. They're smart, trainable, good temperaments. With the right training, they could help veterans like you. The idea hit Marcus hard. His pups, Ember's pups, helping other broken soldiers find their way back. It felt right in a way few things had in years. What would I need to do? Help design the program, work with a professional trainer to teach the dogs, eventually help match them with veterans who need them. Marcus looked across the yard where Ridge was playing with a tennis ball, where Spark was investigating a butterfly. They'd grown so much in 3 months. Strong, healthy, full of life. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it." The training program took 6 months to develop. Marcus worked with a certified service dog trainer named Patricia Holloway, learning the intricacies of advanced obedience task training, public access skills. Ridge took to it naturally. The Black Shepherd had his mother's intelligence and his own calm confidence. He learned to recognize the signs of panic attacks, to perform deep pressure therapy, to interrupt nightmares. By month 4, he was one of the best prospects Patricia had ever worked with. Spark was more challenging. Her high energy and curiosity made focus difficult, but Marcus persisted, finding ways to channel that energy into productive work. She excelled at mobility assistance, at fetching items, at active interruption of harmful behaviors. Cedar, Willow, and Ash trained too, though, for different purposes. Cedar's gentle nature made him perfect for therapy work rather than service work. Willow, despite her small size and quiet demeanor, showed aptitude for emotional support roles. And Ash. Ash trained alongside Marcus, but never for placement with someone else. That had been clear from the start. Ash was Marcus's dog, and Marcus was Ash's human. End of story. During this time, Marcus continued his own therapy. The PTSD didn't disappear. It never would, but he learned to manage it. Grounding techniques, medication, support systems. He'd gone nearly 4 months without a major episode. When thunder rolled through Pinedale one spring evening, Marcus felt the familiar spike of anxiety. His hands started to shake, his breathing quickened. But Ash was there immediately, pressing against Marcus's legs, his weight solid and real. Marcus put one hand on Ash's head, focused on the warmth of the dog's fur, the steady rise and fall of his breathing. The anxiety didn't vanish, but it didn't spiral into full flashback either. Progress. The day came to place Ridge and Spark with veterans who needed them. The matching ceremony happened at the shelter. 2 men arrived: David Torres, a former Army Ranger, whose PTSD had cost him his job, his marriage, nearly his life, and Jake Brennan, a young Marine who'd lost both legs to an IED and was drowning in survivor's guilt. Marcus saw himself in both of them: the isolation, the pain, the barely controlled fear. He introduced them to Ridge and Spark, respectively. Watched as the dogs did what they'd been trained to do: assess, approach, connect. Ridge pressed his head against Torres's chest, and the veteran's hands came up automatically, settling on the dog's fur. Tears followed. Spark placed her paw on Brennan's wheelchair, refused to be dismissed, wore down his resistance with pure, stubborn persistence. Both men left with their new partners. Both looked less alone than when they'd arrived. Marcus stood with Evelyn and watched them go. "You did that," Evelyn said quietly. "The dogs did that. You trained the dogs. You understood what those men needed because you needed it too." Marcus didn't respond, but his chest felt tight. Pride, maybe. Purpose. The sense that his own suffering had been transmuted into something that helped instead of hurt. It didn't erase the past. Didn't bring back Merrick and Garrett. Didn't cure his PTSD. But it was something. 6 months later, 1 year after Ember had first appeared at his cabin door, Marcus stood on the porch of his rental house watching the sunrise. The house had changed in that year. No longer just functional, it had become a home. Pictures on the walls, comfortable furniture. A kitchen that smelled like coffee and breakfast instead of emptiness. And 6 dogs. Ember lay in her favorite spot by the window, graying muzzle resting on her paws. She was older now, moving a little slower, but her eyes were still sharp, still watching over her family. Ridge and Spark had returned from their placements for a visit. Both dogs wore service vests. Both had bonded deeply with their new partners, but they remembered Marcus. They'd spent the evening reacquainting themselves with Cedar and Willow, play-fighting like puppies, despite their adult size. Cedar, now over 80 pounds of gentle giant, had been placed with a children's hospital in Casper. He visited once a month, and every time his tail wagged the moment he saw Marcus. Willow had found her calling as an emotional support animal for an elderly widow in Pinedale. Small, quiet, perfectly suited to the calm companionship her owner needed. And Ash. Ash sat at Marcus's left side, pressed against his leg, the way he'd been since he was small enough to fit in Marcus's jacket. He was lean rather than bulky, probably 45 pounds, with Ember's intelligent eyes and his own quiet intensity. "You know what today is?" Marcus asked Ash. The dog's tail thumped once. "1 year since your mum showed up. 1 year since everything changed." Ash looked up at him with those eyes that had seen too much for such a young dog. Eyes that had watched his human fall apart and come back together. Eyes that held uncomplicated love and loyalty. "I never thanked her properly," Marcus said, looking over at Ember. "Never told her what she did for me." As if hearing her name, Ember lifted her head, met Marcus's gaze, and Marcus understood in that moment that she knew. She'd always known. She hadn't come to his cabin looking for help. She'd come offering it. A broken dog and a broken man healing each other one day at a time. Later that morning, Marcus drove to the shelter. Evelyn had called with news a veteran in Cody needed help. Severe PTSD isolation, refusing treatment. Would Marcus talk to him? Marcus had said yes without hesitation. This was his job now. Official, as of last month. Outreach coordinator for the shelter's veteran program. Part-time, flexible hours enough to cover bills with some left over. More importantly, it gave him purpose beyond just surviving. The veteran's name was Chris Palmer. 42, former Navy corpsman, 2 tours Iraq. He lived in a trailer outside Cody, had been there for 3 years, with minimal human contact. Marcus knew that story. He'd lived that story. Palmer opened the door with a gun in his hand, not pointed at Marcus, just held at his side. A warning. "Chris Palmer," Marcus said calmly. "Yeah, you the guy from the shelter." "Marcus Dalton, Marine Corps vet. I'd like to talk if you've got time." Palmer looked Marcus up and down, took in the faded military bearing, the old combat jacket with the name tape still sewn on the dog at his side. "That a service dog? This is Ash. He's mine not working, but I help train service dogs for vets. Thought maybe you'd want to meet a few." "I don't need a dog." "I didn't either. Or so I thought." Marcus gestured to Palmer's yard. "Mind if I sit? Been driving for an hour." Palmer hesitated, then nodded. Put the gun inside, came back out and sat on the porch steps. Marcus sat at the other end, giving him space. Ash settled between them, neutral ground. "How bad is it?" Marcus asked. "How bad is what?" "The PTSD, the isolation, the feeling like you can't breathe around people." Palmer's jaw clenched. "Who says I have that?" "I do, because I had it too, for 11 years. Lived in the woods, avoided everyone, thought I was keeping people safe by staying away from them. You get over it." "No, but I'm learning to live with it, with help." "Don't need help." "That's what I said, right up until a starving pregnant dog showed up at my cabin during a blizzard and forced me to care about something besides my own pain." Palmer looked at Ash. "That dog? His mother? Ash is one of 5 pups she had. I delivered them, raised them, trained 4 of them to be service dogs for vets just like us. And the 5th, Marcus scratched Ash's ears. "The 5th decided I was his human. And honestly, it's the best decision anyone's made for me in years." They sat quiet for a while. Then Palmer said, "I hurt someone during an episode. Didn't mean to. Just lost time. Lost control. That's why I'm out here. Can't risk it again." "I understand that. I scared the hell out of the dog and her pups during a bad episode, drove them away, spent 5 days in the woods tracking them down." "But you got them back." "Yeah. And you know what I learned? That one bad moment doesn't define you. What you do after, how you make amends, how you get help, how you keep going, that's what matters." Palmer looked at him. "You really believe that? I'm sitting here talking to you instead of hiding in the woods. Yeah, I believe it." Ash chose that moment to stand up and walk over to Palmer, sat directly in front of him, one paw on the veteran's knee. "He's friendly," Marcus said. "I can see that." Palmer reached out, hesitantly touched Ash's head. The dog leaned into it. "What's his story?" Palmer asked. "Born the runt of the litter. Nearly died first night, had to resuscitate him. 3 weeks later got separated from me during a storm. Survived 3 months in the wilderness with his mom and siblings. Got his paw caught in a trap. Needed surgery. But he made it. He's a fighter. Sounds like it. Point is, we've all got scars. All been through hell. But we're still here. And there are people and dogs who can help us stay here if we let them. Palmer was quiet for a long time. Then, how do I start? Marcus pulled out a business card. Call this number. That's Dr. Morrison. Tell him I sent you. He's a vet himself. He gets it. And the dog thing? Come by the shelter next week. Meet some of the dogs we're training. See if any of them click with you. No obligation. Just meet them. Palmer took the card. Okay. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. Marcus stood, called Ash. They walked back to the truck. As he drove away, Marcus saw Palmer in the rearview mirror, still sitting on the porch, still holding the card. It was a start. That evening, Marcus sat on his own porch with Ember and Ash, watching the sun set over the Wind River Range, the mountains where he'd lived alone for so long, the mountains where Ember had found him, the mountains where they'd both almost died, and somehow survived. The beauty of it hit him differently now, not as a place to hide, but as a place to appreciate, to live in rather than just survive in. His phone buzzed. A text from David Torres, the veteran who'd been matched with Ridge 6 months ago. Ridge just pulled me out of a bad flashback. Didn't think this would work. But it does. Thank you. Marcus showed Ember. Your son's doing good work, girl. Ember's tail thumped. Another text, this one from Evelyn Chris Palmer, just called Dr. Morrison. You got through to him. Well done. Marcus felt the weight of it, the responsibility, the purpose, the meaning. A year ago, he'd been a broken man hiding from the world. Now he was helping other broken men find their way back. All because a starving pregnant dog had trusted him enough to ask for help, and because he'd been desperate enough to give it. Thank you, Marcus said to Ember. Not for the first time. Probably not for the last. She looked at him with those amber eyes, calmer now, wiser at peace. And Marcus understood. They'd saved each other. That was the deal. That was the truth. One broken soul recognizing another and deciding that together they could be whole enough to keep going. As darkness fell and the stars came out, Marcus sat with his dogs and felt something he hadn't felt in over a decade. Home. Not a place. Not a building. But this, the warmth of animals who loved him. The purpose of work that mattered, the slow, painful, beautiful process of healing. It wasn't the ending he'd expected, but it was the one he'd earned. And sitting there on his porch, surrounded by the family he'd found in the unlikeliest way possible, Marcus Dalton finally let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he deserved it. Ash pressed closer against his leg. Ember's breathing slowed into sleep. The wind whispered through the pines. And Marcus, for the first time in 11 years, felt the knot in his chest loosen. Not gone. Probably never gone. But looser. Enough to breathe. Enough to hope. Enough to keep walking forward one day at a time, surrounded by love he'd never expected and grace he'd never deserved, but received anyway. That was healing, not the absence of pain, but the presence of love strong enough to carry you through it. And as the stars wheeled overhead and the night settled in, Marcus closed his eyes and let himself rest. Truly rest. For the first time in over a decade. Home.